Thank you everybody to being here. We are going to enjoy a really beautiful conversation today between Diego Echeverts and Javier Molina, who are going to talk about the Cocani Project and all what this project means and the impact that it's having. I'm Alberto Subiron. I'm the digital secretary of the Anglo-Bolivian Society, and I'm going to give the floor now to Kate Ford, who is going to initiate this webinar and introduce it. Thank you very much. Kate, go ahead.
Thank you, Alberto. Good evening, everybody. Buenas tardes. And welcome to this conversation between Diego Echeverts Torres and Javier Molina. Thanks to the miracle of Zoom, Diego is joining us from Bolivia and Javier is in London. Both are photographers, and they met on Facebook, where Javier saw one of Diego's photos published there by a mutual friend. Diego's family is from Oruro, so he was born in Cochabamba. Trained as an architect and an anthropologist, he started to use a camera in fieldwork. He is entirely self-taught as a photographer. He makes some of his own chemicals and materials and enjoys the slow, respectful process of capturing an image with medium or large format cameras and developing it, enjoying, I quote him, the alchemy of creating the story on paper. His Cocani photographs paid tribute to the living traditions of the Ororeño Coca families. He wants to document, well, he has succeeded in documenting family traditions at risk of being exploited and trivialized by commercial interests. The photographs were published in a book, but of course it was a limited edition, and no one can buy this book. Diego gave away all the copies to the heads of the families. Javier studied philosophy and photography in the US before returning to La Paz and working in the restoration department of the Museo Nacional de Arte. One of his rich, wide-angle, color-saturated images, the Valle de Animas overlooking La Paz, is on our banner and our flyers. And Stefan Schmidt, who is going to say a few words in a moment, runs the album and gallery of 20th century and contemporary photography and represents both Diego and Javier, together with a cohort of Brazilian and Colombian photographers. And he is going to introduce both our speakers now.
Thank you, Kate. Good evening and good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I shall be very brief. I am indeed Stefan Schmidt, and I founded Album and Gallery 12, 13 years ago with a view to have a focus on mostly contemporary photography. We're London-based, but with a strong international online presence. And our international audience very much reflects the international spectrum of the photographers we work with and we represent. As it happens, actually, alongside Diego and Javier, we also work with a number of other Latin American photographers, Brazil and Colombia. I really want to give the floor as quickly as possible to Javier and to Diego to allow as much time as possible to talk about Diego's fascinating photography and Cocani Project. Thank you very much.
Well, I suppose it's now for you and me, Diego.
Yeah, I think so, Don Javier.
Okay.
So please, could you begin, please?
Yeah, I thought I should, because as I introducing to you, I wanted to talk about three things with you, namely why photography, and what of photography, and in that section we can talk about the Cocani, which will be the subject of your photography, and then perhaps you can talk about the how of photography, so your hands-on black and white traditional analog photography. Okay. So we can encompass the three basic aspects of your photographic personality.
Okay.
So
Okay.
to kick off, why photography, right? So I'll give you an example. When I was about 4, 5, 6, possibly, my father had a Rolleiflex camera, 2 lenses in a viewfinder on the top.
Yeah.
And my mother would allow me to play with it, unbeknownst to my dad, who would have been very upset if he knew I was playing with his camera. And the fascinating thing is when you flip up the viewfinder and you look down onto the Fresnel, you see, oh, I have disappeared. Anyway, you
It's
see.
okay. It's okay.
Okay, here we go. You see an image floating on the glass on the Fresnel. My mother then would pull up a chair to the window, and I would spend hours looking at that image, because in those days there was no television, there was no mobile phones, and there's this magic little square where I could see the people in the streets going by, and I would spend hours. I think that was the beginning of my desire in photography. What is your earliest experience? What was the necessity of photography for you?
For me.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try this conversation in English, please. I want to start this by saying hello to everyone and thanking you for the opportunity to share a small part of my life. I also warn that my English is not very fluent, okay? So in the absence of continuous practice, it is more than a rusty and also could sound funny. So I appeal to your understanding and I apologize in advance, please. Photography makes me optimistic. Through him, the world and people are seen in a much more understandable way for me. If it weren't for photography, maybe the world wouldn't have many reasons to discover for me. The camera's viewfinder, as you say, Don Javier, is the only setting capable of offering me a deep look at what surrounds people and everything. My memory makes me remember I passed hours and hours looking at all photos from my family. Actually, there are 2 photos that mark my life for even now. And I am talking when I was just a kid. Since I have memory, I remember these 2 photos that my grandfather left me before he died. So I think I'm a photographer because when I was looking these photos, I was happy. And I had the opportunity to fly, to create universes, to try to understand what people was doing when the photograph was took. So I'm a photographer for that, because I think the world looks better in a photo than the real way.
Yeah, fantastic. I agree 100% with you. Definitely 100% with you. So I think that brief introduction of why you and me tried to look at the world behind the lens. Another little anecdote. I went to central London one Sunday, walking alongside the river with the intention of taking photographs of people. I came back with not one photograph of a person. And there was hundreds of people, hundreds of situations. And my eye never turns to people. My eye is attracted by places without people. Landscapes, cityscapes. So that's the difference between you and me. I find portraiture very hard, very hard. I don't think I can.
It is.
Yeah, because in your photographs, you really capture I mean, Juanca, that picture, you know, if there is no way anybody can explain verbally that picture. If you don't look at it, you wouldn't understand Juanca's character. I mean, all your portraits have an extreme perceptive quality, which shows not only the subject being photographed, but the way you see the world. Yeah, notwithstanding the technique, of course, which is, yeah.
Yeah, I think portrait photography it's the most difficult photography to practice because it makes you be near with people.
Yeah.
You have to build some feeling with people to connect. This project was made on 7 years, and really was difficult for me because mostly when we travel to Oruro, we, for example, we have scheduled,
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
5 persons to photograph. But when we are in Oruro, 4 call us and says we can't reach to you for many reasons. So you have to come back with 1 people photographed from 5. And you have to be patient because people has his own time, his own way to see the world. And photography could mean a little thing for them, but for you is your work. But you have to compromise with them because you want to photograph these people. So it's difficult because you don't have many time to spend with trying to build this lace with those people. But you have to. And analog photography teach me that we have to be patient. And that's not only referred to the technical part of the photography. It has to become a philosophy for your life. So when you photograph persons, you have to dance with them on their time, on their beliefs, and mostly on their priorities. And you have to understand these people in this way. And let me say, these people, it's really difficult to understand because Aymara people has his own philosophy. In this philosophy, there are many contradictions. So you have to think in Aymara way to understand these people. So I have to say that portrait photography makes you think as the people you want to photograph. And I think this is the part what makes difficult this kind of photography.
You're already explaining almost a psychological, anthropological view of the subject you're photographing, which is very intense. And going back to, I'm not sure how you proceed, but in my days of black and white film camera, I only took 1 photograph. I never took 5 or 6 of the same thing to find out which one is a good one. It was 1. That method, although I've got a digital camera now, I still only take 1. I don't take hundreds and then choose 1. So I imagine, especially with a big camera with big plates, you can't really afford throwing away templates for one picture.
Oh, sure, and we have to consider too that materials are not always available here.
Exactly.
Bolivia, it's one of the expensive, one of the most expensive countries to get photo gear, even if we're talking of analog gear, because film it's not available. Cameras, working cameras in a kind of acceptable way to use are not always available too. So it's really difficult. And if you want to make a project using cameras more advanced than the 135, because this 135 is the format usually known everywhere in the world. I'm talking about medium format cameras and large format cameras. It's more difficult because materials are expensive, and there's less chance to get these materials for your work. So when you have these materials, 120 film or plate film, you have to count your shooting. You have to make it count. In 120 format, you have only 12 frames to photograph. And there have been times that in 12 frames, I had to photograph a family and other 8 people, and maybe 1 or 2 utilería, it's
Objects.
how?
Objects.
Yeah. And stunts, yeah, and stunts. And there's 12 frames took. And also, you have to be really careful in this process because you have to develop this film. And the developer we have here in Bolivia, it's always expired one. So you have to compensate times. You have to use anything you can find to use. But even that, you have to make it count. And you don't have a lot of materials to try and maybe dismiss. You have to use everything you have. And considering that, I think it's twice as difficult because it is not just the process. It is the process, and now it is the materials too. But you have to make it count. And that's, and I repeat that because that's the sentence I repeat every day of my life.
You have to make it count. Yeah, understandably. So now moving on to the actual project of the book that took you 7 years to build. So not only the patience, the understanding of the language and mentality of the subjects you were photographing, in trying to encompass all these problems. I think it'll be interesting to talk about the Cocani now. You have a nice quote in the book that you say the Oruro Carnival as a visual reference. I had to study many and varied collections, private collections, to be able to build a language, an aesthetic capable of connecting with the rich history of the group. Yeah. So perhaps we should explain to the audience how the Cocani came about, going back to Morenada Central, the arrival of other people that were not traditional, they didn't come from the traditional side of the people.
Mm.
And then you have the difference between the ritual side of Morenada and the carnival side of Morenada.
The carnival or the commercial side of the Morenada. Yeah, I have to explain something first to understand why Cocani.
Right.
Okay, so why the Cocanis are not the other Morenada? I would like to talk a few words about this.
Absolutely do.
And I will say this is a small approximation about La Gran Morenada. Okay, Cocani is the popular term used to identify coca leaf traders in the city of Oruro. There is no other place in Bolivia that identifies them in this way. It corresponds to the Aymara language that uses the suffix ni to define it or these people as of the coca. Okay, so coca is very important for these people, and coca maybe it's one of Bolivian flags we have to understand because it's one of the most antique symbols we use here in our culture, okay? Cocani and its historical relationship with the city of Oruro began formally at the end of the 19th century, during the resurgence of the mining economy, which from the abrupt decline of silver passed to the voracious rise of tin, which by the beginning of the 20th century had turned Oruro into the most prosperous city in Bolivia. Okay, we are talking about 1901, 1902 to 1920. Originally from Humala region, it's located between La Paz and Oruro. The first migrants came from 6 communities that are fondly remembered to this day. These communities are called Cairiri, Paruta, Jagnuni, Aguarica, Yacariri, and Puchu. These 6 communities traveled to Oruro trying to find better ways because the decline of the mining of silver declined a lot of communities in the large and vast altiplano to look forward to a new economy. At first, when they reached Oruro, they sold everything they could, okay? But little by little, the retail sale of coca leaves allowed them better stability, which by strategically connecting with the miners and some other sectors of commerce, would allow the consolidation of a prosperous sector that would be established with a great presence around the central market of the city. That's why later they called Morenada de la Zona Central, because they were settled around the central market. The economic boom that the city's mining industry experienced in the first 20 years of the 20th century allowed the development of social activities to also increase and be strengthened by constant cultural exchanges, as well as multiple social networks in continuous movement, okay? The Oruro Carnival is a product of this dynamic, which in its historical process absorbed intense and complex forms of symbolic self-representation until it became a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity 100 years later. This is 2001. Originally, the Cocani didn't arrive in Oruro identified with the Morenada. The traditional dance is the Huacatinti, which is a part of the agricultural calendar of their communities of origin, okay? Which, as it does not coincide in time and space with the celebration of the carnival, allowed them to join the Comparsa de Morenos, with which they felt an affinity because there are two how do I say personajes, Don Javier?
Characters.
Characters, okay. There are two characters, really seems to be the same, okay? So they felt affinity with this dance that already existed in the city. And it belonged to the candle and bait merchants. These people were close neighbors in the daily commercial task with the Cocanis, with whom they shared space around the market. As a result of this contact, in a relatively quick period in time, the Cocani founded their own Morenada in 1924. And since then, their contribution became important to the carnival because over the years and certain moments of their intimate process, they contributed by innovating and strengthening the representation of this dance that captivates locals and strangers now. Thus, for example, after 1954, the year of an internal refoundation after the Guerra del Chaco, there were no longer only coca merchants and or their direct descendants in the group, but also that by time, other sectors of society, including the elite class, had managed to penetrate to the very heart of the organization. These people had power in this organization, so a little by little were pushing out the really founders, and it was a power issue inside the organization. These culturally diverse sectors or this diversity, which did not correspond to the Cocanis, began to transform the uses and customs with which the Morenada had characterized and consolidated, even facing serious communication problems, especially symbolic, between the participants. By November of 1992, the year in which the 500th anniversary of the arrival of Christopher Columbus to America was celebrated, and the speeches of vindication of the original cultures were in full force in almost all settings of Bolivian society, these communication problems had reached levels to intolerance and discrimination that caused an irremediable rupture between the Cocani, with proven Aymara roots, and the rest of the members who didn't identify with them. With a clearly delimited distance between these Aymaras and not Aymaras in the public scene of the city, there were two emerging Morenadas from the same root. One that after a refoundation of 1954 was called Fraternidad Morenada Central Oruro, and the other, the legitimate one, which claimed the name with the which was originally born in 1924, Morenada Central Oruro, founded by the Cocani community, with this last detail that this time would make it clear that it was founded by the original migrants who reached Oruro at the beginning of the 20th century. That's why now we have two Morenadas Central, but one is Fraternidad, and it was influenced by Masones. The term fraternity comes from them. And the other one, the Aymaras, who just call Morenada Central Oruro. Okay? These struggles and demands raised in these microclones of symbols, which spill over into the streets of Oruro, loaded with beer, music, and transgressions of public order, gave me enough motivation to attempt an approach to this Morenada.
Right, so you've given us a focus as to the beginning of the book.
Yeah,
reason
this is the first part.
You wanted to latch or register the authentic traditional ritual of Morenada, more than the carnival as a festivity or
Yeah, but it has also a lot of problems inside too, because I wanted to reach a place who always uses color to share their images. Also, these people, it's how do I say desconfiado?
Mistrustful.
Mistrust. These people, it's really mistrustful for obvious reasons. So it's really difficult to get in. Even I'm too white for them too. So you have to understand it was really difficult. And any way you see this thing. However, the idea was never to tell a story of dance and carnival. Never.
No.
The idea of this photographic essay was always to capture the depth of the situation, claiming voices, discovering people. The idea of this essay was always to produce a very political book, both from the discourse of the contents, as well as the construction of the visual language and the aesthetics of photography. I wanted to use this situation to approach using a photography that was not seen as correct for them and for others. That's why this is one of the few books who talks about Carnaval de Oruro in black and white.
Yeah, because
for example,
every other publication, including mine, is full of color, because the whole festivity of the carnival is
it's
full
color.
of color. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you explained that it is not the carnival that you wanted to record, but it is the inherent nature of the Cocani group in the most traditional way of doing it, which is black and white. You couldn't get any further back unless you're.
And one of the voices of these people was, why black and white? Why don't you use color? We are colorful. Our Morenada is beautiful and it's fully colored. And I just can say to them, because black and white makes appear the spiritual weight of persons. Black and white is magical. It's the language of the story too. So if I want to rememorate and reivindicate the story of these people, I had to use the language of their story. And that's why I realized it has to be black and white instead of color. And I have no regrets about it. I would do it again and again and again without any problem, because I realized and I've learned that black and white worries about the spirit of people. Color is a distraction. And that's why this book, it's completely made on film and black and white.
Mm-hmm. It's always my saying that a true photograph stands as a good photograph if you take away the color. Any photograph, if you take away the color and it's still a good photograph, yeah, that's to me the indication of a good photograph is removing the color. Color is an extra that in a way it's not necessary. In a way it's not necessary. And much more if you want to, as you were saying, capture the essence of a character.
Yes.
And absolutely, you've done it absolutely well. Mm.
Thank you. Really, thank you, Don Javier. Listen, and we have to talk in many ways too. For example, in a world full of digital technology, the simple act of producing a document based on photographic film using old cameras is in itself a revolutionary act. So this thing had to be the cornerstone of the project, because we had to photograph people who struggled in 1992 to save their morenada and their uses. We had to approach them with respect and with no distractions. So we had to be careful, and we had to do it with time, reflect, thinking about the meaning of the composing the photography and the uses of light and shadow. We had to be very careful to settle this in the way we can use this political philosophy of the Cocanis to be clear and to be, how can I say, justos con ellos.
Just
Fair?
adequate, fair, yeah, fair.
Fair with them, okay?
Yes.
In a world full of colors and fantastic photographs that challenge the definition of perfection, using black and white as the cornerstone of this language is in itself an act of premature suicide, I used to thought, because as happened with work, at first it was not understood altogether. But the habit of looking at color photographs to reference the magic of the carnival, as we were talking earlier, and the party caused many doubts in those who saw our process up close. But that was not enough to stop us from thinking about the idea, black and white, to tell a dark-skinned story. It's crazy. Well, yes, it sounds like it, absolute madness, but nevertheless, once the book reached their hands of the protagonists, it was wonderful to observe how the distractions of colors stopped being important for them. Many eyes filled with tears, and most of them assumed that the book became a letter of legitimacy for their lineage, their contributions to the struggle, or simply to the group as such. Since that day, many of the Cocani families include the book among their antiques and family heirlooms, with which they are presented at exhibitions and fairs publics, where their pride of belonging is expressed though their precious objects. And this book and this black and white photography, it's with them.
And absolutely fascinating how you which is what I was saying earlier on, your ability to capture character. Understandably, there must have been a big reluctance to accept the black and white, but once they've seen your photographs or themselves in a reflective way, in a more subtle black and white, and not in a garish color, I can see it and imagine it, that they must have been very, very touched, because black and white, as you say, has a quality beyond color. Yeah. Which really goes,
sure.
Yeah.
And we have to add that the format of the book, because it's a big book, it's 30 by 30 centimeters a page, made them see as never they saw themselves. So this format helped us to get more impressive on them.
Yes, it's also that when you see it on television, when you see it on a digital format, it's a completely different world, especially if you're not accustomed to seeing photography books. And then you're presented with your tradition on printed book, on a printed object, on an object that you can actually touch and feel its weight and its color and its texture. I guess I can imagine the delights they must have had in seeing themselves on a printed paper.
No, for sure, and that's one of the most important things I think in photography. It's desestimated with new photographers, because digital format does not have the responsibility to get the paper to exist, because there's a screen on the gear. But in analog, if you want to see what do you photograph, you have to take that photo to the paper. There's no other way. But now we have a scanner as a tool to see. But if you want to see what was on your frame, you have to go to the lab, you have to use the darkroom, and you have to get this negative to the paper to be shown as a photography, as you know photography. And analog photography has that precisely because it's slower, okay? It's slower, but this sense of time makes you more it makes you think in a process, in a larger process, and makes you more consciente of each stage of the process, okay? So it doesn't happen with digital photography. And when you have this to be careful, you really pay attention to the details. And that's the difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. With analog, first you have to understand the relationship of your camera with the negative, the light with your negative. Then after that, if you've exposed it correctly, you are lucky. If you're underexposed, then when you develop it, you have to compensate for your mistake. Yeah. So it's all an immense, as you say, act of patience, because you cannot see the result until you developed your film. Yeah. Then once you see your film, then you have to do the same thing with the paper. So you know the varieties of paper, too contrasty, not enough contrast, to be able to get an image that is 100% satisfactory to you. And as you say, it takes days and days.
Just one portrait would make you work a week just to be fine as you imagine the pic. Okay, that does not happen with digital, because you have 100, 200, thousands of images from the same scene, right? But that's not the point. The point is to be conscient of what are you doing, and you don't need thousands, but you need time to make one. And analog makes you think more and shoot less.
Yeah,
Because you have to make it count.
yeah, absolutely. That is a motto that most analog photographers have always used. You have to make it count.
Yeah.
You have to make it count.
Yeah, for sure. And this darkroom work always, it is always larger than the took of the photography, the shoot. Okay, so you have to work 2 or 3 times more than you have to work when you are taking the picture. Make this picture go from the film to the paper. It's the most difficult part of all this process, because it's make the picture again, correcting what could what could not be so fine when you took this picture. You have to compensate and make it right in the darkroom. So one picture could make you work a week, and this book has 162 photographs. We have made in these 7 years almost 60 contact sheets, so 60 rolls of film were used to make this project. And I think it's a huge work. Maybe in numbers you can't realize what it is in terms of work, but for a photographer who makes analog photography, it is a lot of material and a lot of photographs. But now in digital, now you 60 rolls of films are maybe, if you allow me, I'm gonna make this 60 contact sheets for 12 frames each, 720 images. That is the number of an hour of shooting with digital. But in analog, it's 7 years of work.
Yeah. And I mean, this is where the artistry and your quality of observing the rules of light and shadow, for example, where all your portraits of the Cocani are very much on the true traditional portraiture of Yoshua Kash, of Avedon, of all the great photographers, all the so-called great photographers that preceded us, which is why it is so such an incredible work you've done. I mean, you're talking about numbers, but each one is almost magic. It's almost like you produced it magically.
Thank you, Don Javier. Thank you. And as you say, I tried to pay a tribute what I've seen in my life. When I began to make photography, I didn't have any book of photography. I started in 1997 at the university. And I used the photography to accomplish what my teachers wanted to pass their subjects, okay? And that was all. And about how to use a camera, I never seen a book until 2 or 3 years earlier. But when I was learning just using the camera and seeing through the viewfinder. That was all the teaching I had. Even though I never had a word of how do I put a roll of film on the camera. I had to go to the lab, to a public lab, and see how the guy of the lab put this roll on another camera, because I was too shy to ask to. And that time, not many people was kindly with you and teach. Now you have YouTube, the web, any spaces to learn. But when I started, I had to see even how to use a camera. What was for that little numbers in the camera, you know? But I appreciate really my life because I had to work hard to learn what I know now. And I think that makes you more compromised with your work because you have to make it count. There was a lot of film or of raw films I wasted in that time because I didn't know how to use it. But it made me a person who wants to make less mistakes in the process. So this was since 1997 until now. Obviously, you make mistakes every day, but I think the goal is to make it less, cada vez más, ¿no?
And it's also the ability to get the shot exactly as you wanted it.
As you imagine, yeah.
Yes. How it comes to you, you have to see it as exactly the way you wanted to do it, and you only have one chance.
Yeah, that's correct, and it makes you more compromised with details.
Yeah,
you more compromised with your process, because if you can't reach what you're imagining in your head, you have to think, how do you get that in the dark room? Because you can make a beautiful negative that it's not the same as you imagined in your head, but if you think about it when you were working on that, maybe your head will take you to the dark room to get what you think.
Yes.
I want to thank both of you. It has been a fascinating conversation that we enjoyed in these 40-50 minutes. It was really interesting. Understanding the world of photography, the world of analogic photography, as well as all what the Cocani Project means and why you do in the way that you did it. I want to thank you, both of you. It was really interesting. And what I would like is basically to give way now to the Q&A session so our audience can make questions. As I remember to everybody, you can use the Q&A button and send your question there, or you can raise your hand and I will give you the mic so you can have a direct dialogue with Diego and Javier. I will jump, taking here my privilege of being a moderator here, and I will just make just a simple question to you, Diego. If you have to define the Cocani Project in one word, what word would that be?
Life.
Good luck, Diego.
That's really good.
But it is life. Life of the people I photographed, also my life trying to make it count.
Thank you. So there is an attendee who is asking if you have planned to reprint the book.
We were talking with Stefan. Maybe we're going to reprint this book, but in English. I would love to put these images in a new impression in London in English.
You will be more than welcome here in London. I'm sure about that.
Just to add while we wait for a further question, but I can imagine how the joy you had when you saw it printed, when you see its reality. It's so uplifting. It's so uplifting when you see a book on
Sure.
paper. I'm
Sure, Don Javier, but I have to say, sorry, I want to use the same word I've used to define this last part of the process of printing. But when I presented the book in Oruro, I used this word, parto. How do you say parto in English?
Birth. Birthing, or giving birth.
It was, printing this book was giving birth. Doesn't sound what I would like to sound, but I want to show this because when we were in the last stage of printing here in Bolivia, in La Paz, Sagitario, the best printers here, we had a fought. We fought with these people because there were a lot of details they did not attempt in their moment. So the book that I imagined in that time was not the book I was looking. So they have to reprint it.
Right.
And that's one most remembered anecdotes we have in the producing of this book.
You've got a couple of questions here, Diego.
Okay.
Yes. There is one from Cecilia Linares. I'm going to read this. Hi, Cecilia, and thank you for being with us. I know that the CBAT has been really instrumental to make this conversation live to us, and you work pretty close with us. So we thank you as Anglo-Bolivian Society. So here is your question. What is your next project other than the English edition of the Cocani Group?
Cecilia, thanks for being here with us. Thanks for the all the support you are making up for us. Actually, I'm working on the second part of this book because Cocani people want to share their old photographs. So I'm editing a new book with photographies of many collections from the Cocani families. So until November this year, we're gonna print the second volume of this publication. But this book will be historical. So I am working on restoring, classifying, and editing this book just to preserve the visual memory of the Cocanis. So that's coming. We want to put this book in English. And in my photograph, I am working on, we were talking outside camera here earlier, the old people was saying Cochabamba, it's the best way to eat here in Bolivia. So I want to do a documentary about the popular food, but from their stories, from their faces, from anything what is related to food here in Cochabamba. So I'm just beginning to work on that.
I have here Kate, who is raising her hand, so I'm sure she's eager to make a question of this fascinating conversation you have. So go ahead, Kate, please.
Thank you. I have so enjoyed what we've heard. It has really been a huge privilege and just wonderful to hear you talking. But what I want, my question is, did you find when you presented your work to the subjects of your photograph, was there a difference in the reception of the work between old people, well, between generations, between the grandparents and the teenagers?
Yeah. People who cried was the older one, because I think they were, how can I say, acostumbrados?
Accustomed.
They were accustomed to see black and white photos. But young people asked about the gear, about the process, about the looking of the photographies. But older people cried and hugged the book and never let them go.
Diego, I'm going to read just a comment of Magali Nelly Mamani Rojas.
Oh.
And it's not a question, but it's a comment, but I think it's relevant to jump in now. It's saying that, congratulations, architect Diego Chevers. All the work you do is always highly valuable, and it fills me with happiness and pride to learn from you. Halala Cocanis.
Thank you. Thank you a lot, Maggie.
I have a question of Mauricio Rios. He was asking also for your next photographic project, but he also asked if you are based in Oruro and if you have any plan to come to La Paz in the future.
I'm always traveling to La Paz. Actually, we're gonna be on La Paz on August to the Feria Internacional del Libro. We are going to talk about this book, the coming projects, and we have to talk about the presentation of a little booklet we are preparing to this fair, one of this series. We are making these little booklets using photographs and songs and other cultural items from the Cocanis. So we're gonna be on August in La Paz. Will be a pleasure to meet you, amigo mío.
Perhaps I want to jump with one last question from my part, privilege of moderator, as I always say. So you mentioned something that really struck me during your conversation, that is the mistrust of the local people when you were doing, and how do you approach? Can you remind me, how do you overcome this mistrust and how you make this approach to them in order to make the project a success?
Was very difficult because this mistrust comes from the past, comes from a difficult story, right? Because Aymara people was marginada,
Marginalized.
marginalized.
Yeah.
Since we have memory and since this country was founded, you know. The best way you can revert this situation, I think, it's empatizar, Don Javier.
Empathize.
Empathize and share their struggles. You have to work with them until they realize you are there for them, not for you. And that's why these people gave me the opportunity of use a vicuña poncho, that it's the symbol of the Cocani heritage. This poncho that you can buy everywhere doesn't mean a lot if you just buy a poncho. But if these people put you a poncho on your body, means you are one of them. So you have to work with them, struggle with them, share their dreams, find the logical forms of language and search the purposes of their life. You can be one of them. And when these people, as I said, put you a poncho, means you made it. You earned the political, the economical, the symbolical, the philosophical way to use this poncho and being one of them too.
I want to thank you, both of you. It has been an excellent conversation, very illustrative. I have one last question that just come in from an anonymous attendee who says, the meaning of being a Cocani, does it still have the traditional respect and meaning of legal commercialization, or is the tradition getting lost because of illegal uses of coca?
That's another theme too. Being one of these identity, Cocani, doesn't mean you are a coca leaf trader. For that, you have to get a permission that it's legally controlled by the state. But if you are a part of this Cocani organization, you have a lot of the way walked through to get this permission. So if one day I left photography, maybe I would become a coca leaf trader, to be a complete Cocani in my life.
Diego, Javier, I'm really thankful for all your contribution for tonight, all your ideas. And I would like to give the floor again to Kate to make a closure this magnificent conversation and enlightenment that you provide to us. Kate, go ahead, please.
Thank you. It has been such a pleasure and a privilege to listen to two artists tossing this subject about between them. And it's been very moving at times too. And Diego, especially, I must thank you for your brilliant English. I'm so impressed. Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
please.
No,
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
was great. Thank you. And I mean, I think the Anglo-Bolivian Society should have artist talks more often, personally. And thank you too, Stefan, for your introduction and also for your essay, 2020 essay and photo monitor, which I rifled for the flyer and for my introduction earlier. We would like to offer each of the three of you, Diego, Javier, Stefan, honorary membership at the Anglo-Bolivian Society for a year, and I will be in touch. And thank you too, a big thank you to Cecilia Linares and CBAT, who brought us all together. And thank you, audience, to you all for coming. And we hope to see you at our next talk, which will be on the 27th of June. Details are on our website, or you can just email me at the address you got this Zoom link from. And again, thank you so much. Really grateful to you both for giving us your time and energy and emotion. Thank you. And goodbye.
Thanks to you, Kate. Thanks, everybody, from my heart.
Halala, Diego.
Halala.
Halala Cocanis, and thank you. All the best for all of you. Just a quick reminder to everybody, this conversation is going to be on our website, the record of this conversation. So whenever you want to look at it or review it again, you can go to the website of the Anglo-Bolivian Society, and also with the CBAT, because I'm going to share this with the CBAT, so you can go and enjoy with this conversation. Once again, thank you very much, and have a great night or great afternoon in La Paz.
Thanks, everyone. Halala, halala, halala. Goodbye.
Adios, Diego.
Bye-bye.
Take care.